about higher education committee that you've launched for this session. Is the ultimate goal with this so that you all can appropriate less for the regents going forward to force the three institutions to be more efficient, to make sure they're cranking out students, to fill some of our workforce shortage areas, but ultimately it's so that you don't have to fund them as much? Is that fair?
I would say, I wouldn't necessarily say an objective is to fund less. What I would say the objective is for the dollars that we do spend, regardless of how much that is, that we're having results trying to fill those high demand fields, back to what you just said. So I think that is more of the driver in this conversation, is making sure that there's a level of accountability and value to the taxpayer. Property taxes obviously have been the number one issue. One of the issues that continues to come up, and it's been year after year, is workforce issues. And I've always tried to bring to the table, being speaker, being willing to try different things than the way we've always done them. And I think bringing light to that, we expect, and this isn't just for Regents. I mean, this is for all levels of higher education. That's something that I catch myself sometimes. We just have steered this conversation towards Regents, and obviously that's a significant portion of this. But I think overall, for the value of the dollars that we invest in higher education, we need to make sure that we have partners that are helping us solve the workforce shortage that we have in the state. We've already started down that path, something that I worked on all the way back to when I was appropriations chair. Instead of just funding institutions, trying to fund scholarships for high demand fields. Ideas like that in the past we haven't been creative enough, in my opinion, to try to force this conversation, I think is kind of more the mentality that we're going into this session with when it comes to higher education.
Should the regents expect to get the same or less money in this upcoming budget?
Well, I've been doing this long enough to not to make any predictions sitting here before a session has started on what somebody's budget will look like. What I can say is for all areas of higher education, we need to make sure that we're getting the value for the taxpayer. I mean, that's really what the driver is. As far as specific levels and what that looks like, I think it's extremely premature to say, but I think that we're going to be looking at the dollars that we invest to make sure that they're helping achieve the goals that we have for Iowa.
Back in the day when Tom Vilsack was governor, if I'm remembering this right, he had put together this committee and they looked at the concept of maybe charging the university's property taxes as a way of sort of a disincentive for them. You're a rich guy, you give a university a bunch of money and you get a building named after you, right? And that just makes it more and more and more and more and more expensive to run. And if I remember right, the impetus back then was, hey, let's maybe not build so much stuff. Let's instead keep tuition down and focus on the core programs and stuff. And I know this is 20 years ago or whatever it was, but is any kind of that kind of concept worth talking about?
So I would say, so I don't know for sure on that one. I probably was in high school when that one was floating around. So it was a
Thanks
little
for
before
pointing out my
it was a
age.
little,
I
it was a
appreciate
little
that.
before my time. That was that was back when you were a teenager too, and you
All right,
barely
thank
remember
you.
those like me. But what I think ultimately for higher education, similar to property taxes, if we're going to make significant differences, I think everything has to be on the table that as we enter into these conversations. So whether it's a specific piece of policy, I would just say at this point, I would assume almost everything is going to be on the table as that committee convenes.